Welcome back to Off the Pitch, the podcast where we chat with individuals working within and shaping the game of soccer from off the pitch. In this episode, we're joined by Kevin Couture. Kevin is currently the Senior Vice President of the USL's Club Performance Group. Kevin walked David and I through his entire career so far, detailing how he went from almost a 2-decade-long career in USA hockey to making the jump to his beloved and our beautiful game of soccer. If you listened to our episode with the USL Championship President Jeremy Allenbow, you might remember him mentioning that there's a department within the league who helps all of the clubs not only succeed on the pitch, but more importantly off the field from a business standpoint. Well, Kevin is the individual who heads up that department, so this episode and conversation is full of golden nuggets, interesting insights, and a real how-to of how to make a successful soccer organization here in the United States. I know that you're going to learn a thing or two from listening to this conversation with Kevin, so without further ado, let's get into the episode. Good morning, Kevin. Of course, we, just chatted for a couple of minutes, but welcome into the podcast. We are delighted to have you. For anyone who doesn't know who you are, and, because that's a case for a lot of these episodes, that people know what people are doing. They can see it, but they don't know the names, the faces behind it. We know a bit about you, of course, now, but would you mind just sharing with everyone else a bit about who Kevin is, beyond just your role? Give us a quick run through of everything.
Yeah. Well, first off, appreciate it, guys. Looking forward to having a chat here and sharing some of my experiences. But I grew up in Massachusetts playing soccer, playing competitive club soccer, ODP soccer through the days. Had an opportunity to play in college. I played at Merrimack College. Great experiences overall, and obviously have always been a huge fan of the game at all levels, and paid attention to the game at all levels. But going back to those college days, I was looking for what's next. To realize that I was never going to make any money as an athlete, but plenty of people were making money working in that business side of sports. So was a marketing major at the time, trying to understand what existed. There was no sport management track at the time. But again, keeping my eyes open, and ultimately was introduced to the world of national governing bodies and the Olympic movement and kind of that whole sport business side of it. In Colorado Springs, where many of those national governing bodies are, there was an opportunity at USA Hockey. So I went out there and I turned that entry-level opportunity into, 19 plus incredible years, growth, professional development, but just having a lot of fun and learning an awful lot of the business side of sport, everything from the membership side to running recreational tournaments in early days to then ultimately leading world championships at, many levels, and all the business that went behind that, the ticketing strategy, marketing strategy, sponsorship, some pre-Olympic tours on our women's side, had a great chance to be a part of. And again, where I ended my 19 and a half years was overseeing the day-to-day strategy of our sponsorship program, the overall partnership platform, rather, I'd call it. Everything from our sales process to how we were engaging in the strategy of what our value proposition was. And then had some oversight with our merchandise program, brick and mortar, and our e-com platform as well. But as the years went on too, I always been aware of the soccer ecosystem, new USL. Again, as a fan, was introduced to some folks here and was afforded an opportunity to join USL in December of 2023 in what really became employee number 2 of the new, at the time, Club Performance Group. And this group, now as I look back at that, it's been, just over a year. But, have had an opportunity with some changes here to take a broader role with our Club Performance Group and just be an in-house consultancy, if you will, to walk alongside our professional clubs throughout USL's 3 leagues on the women's side, and then the 2 professional men's leagues. And be an advocate and a support system at any area that we could be on the pro side. So it's been a great journey. Thrilled to be on the soccer side of it now. The hockey side was great. I'm a hockey fan, but again, soccer is where my passion always was from a fandom standpoint and a playing standpoint. So really excited to be here where I am now.
Awesome. That's great. And we'll do, a run through of everything and go back and start with hockey, but just want to call out for, again, anyone who's listening. I'm particularly excited to get in everything with you because you have the league level knowledge and not only, the club level knowledge. So we've spoken with folks who have both, like Jeremy Allenbow was in a club, albeit NISA, and then in the league level now, but you get to see kind of, I don't know how many teams are between Championship, League One,
Yeah.
and the USL Super League, that you get to see like ground level of a lot, like that in-house consultancy for these professional teams. That sounds like a dream job. So we'll pull it all apart and understand what goes on, but don't want to gloss over your 19 years plus that you spent, some change of months in USA Hockey, because I think anyone who spends 19 years anywhere, having started at an entry level and getting into the director role, especially at a company that size and something that's doing operations like, a governing body for a sport, especially in America, is no easy deal. So I would love to, before we get into the good stuff with the soccer, just even break down from a career standpoint, what it was that you were doing that, made a company like that not only want to keep you for 19 years, but keep pushing you up the ranks, of like earning your stripes, especially in sports, on the field, on the court, on the ice, but off of all of that as well. It's just the same thing. You have to earn the right to go up. So give us some, I don't know if it's career advice for anyone that's listening, of like, how do you do that? How do you spend 19 years at a company and keep going up and absorbing more responsibility?
Yeah, and it is, and I know it's rare, right? I mean, I know it's rare to have stayed anywhere that long. Full credit to the people I had a chance to learn from and work alongside. I have nothing but great friendships, mentors that helped me along those 19 years. I'm sure there was a level of you're given an opportunity and you run with it, but again, at every point I was learning and I was challenging myself. And the one thing I'd say from a professional advice standpoint is anyone looking to get into the industry who's not aware of the national governing bodies, I'm a huge advocate of the experiences that provides, because again, you touch everything. And hockey is a little bigger than some of the other national governing bodies where you really have your hands in the membership side all the way up to, the relationship with the NHL and what that means from an exposure standpoint. But, as a young professional growing, I was given a chance because I was in a smaller governing body setting than versus, let's say, a front office at a professional team. I was given the chance to sit at tables that, otherwise I probably wouldn't have, been allowed to sit at just from a stature standpoint. However, given opportunities to sit there early on, listen to what presidents of NHL teams were saying, how they were conducting their business, just noticing that. But with that, USA Hockey at the time I was there was really growing over those 19 years to be more of from a membership-based organization to a membership-based organization platform that could also be run as a business. So again, worked with and under great people along that time, and was provided a chance to reinvent not my career by any means, but just exposure. Again, you go from membership side of it to running and hosting international events, and when you're doing that, just the breadth and the exposure to elements that I talked about earlier, the ticketing strategy behind world championships and pre-Olympic tours, and the marketing in the communities. We didn't know the communities, right? We would go into a Buffalo market or Detroit market, so we relied on their input. They knew the market better than we did. So there was collaboration and learnings and trying to find out what one market does versus another market. But then ultimately getting that experience to step up again further, and having had the relationship with a lot of our corporate partners at USA Hockey at the time, because I was on the ground for 10 to 14 days at some of these world championships, right? And you're mingling and you're socializing with our sponsors. So I think a lot of that started with a personal relationship, and then again being afforded an opportunity to lead that strategy. But I would also say from a sponsorship standpoint, where I ended at USA Hockey, I didn't know any different, right? But when you're selling something that's not so media heavy, I mean, USA Hockey, our national teams are on TV a lot, but we didn't own those, right? Those World Championship weren't our media rights. So therefore, the sponsorship inventory and what you were selling was you were selling a relationship, you were selling a strategy of how to maybe reach the 640,000 participant members and their families, how to reach the fans. But I didn't know any better, right? So when you talk to peers who they're really moving media units because you're having, so many hundreds of thousands of people watching, multiple games per year. That's a different sales process than is, hey, we got to convince you why this could be interesting, but we don't know that until we ask you and learn a little bit, right? So again, I go back to my experiences there of providing me with at least the mindset of, partnership sales is just that. It's partnerships. It doesn't mean that there's going to always be a logical fit with every brand. And certainly it has to be the understanding of the brand before it can be your understanding. But I think those experiences were great. And it helped me understand how to go about that and make sure that it was a relationship first, and that we were attacking it very strategic and being an extension of those brands and or their represented agencies. And those are skills that transferred very well here for USL, because again, we're not selling, the clubs are selling. We're just privileged to, at any point in their process, be supportive of whatever they may need. They may need data. They may need, storylines at the national level that help their local attractiveness. But again, it's working alongside them to figure out how we can be helpful. So, I mean, I look at my whole progression through USA Hockey, and it went by very, very quickly. But at every step of the way, I was taught and gained experiences that presented me very well for this role. And then I would say this: in the the year and a few months I've been here, continued to learn from those who I work alongside and with, both at USL HQ and the club level, to build on top of those experiences and maybe bring something a little different. Right? I think there's a benefit to having been a USL fan, but maybe not being on the inside, because again, I think difference of opinions are great, but there's so much institutional knowledge within here that there's always something to pull from and learn from as well. So the progression has been pretty wild, but I think looking back, it's been it's built on top of each other very well, and I'm very, very grateful at every step of the way, including here at USL, for those who've given me an opportunity to continue to grow and to continue to learn.
And we'll absolutely get into all of the things you've learned so far in this first year and some months in the USL. But staying within the hockey realm for a while, and just honing in on people, right? Because that's the thing we've picked up on. That's the common denominator in every person we speak with, is the value and importance they place on the people around them, the relationships they're building. Anytime we ask to look backwards and what is the favorite part about anything, it's always the people. Having gone from entry level up to director level, you will have obviously worked with a lot of great leaders, mentors. What are some of the lessons, sticking within hockey specifically, what are some of the lessons you learned from some of your mentors and leaders that were you were under, that then when you kind of switched into that leader role yourself as you gone up the ranks, that you look to kind of implement based on like what you had seen from other leaders?
Yeah, and in the first part is probably more human element than it is business wise, right? I always appreciated and was fortunate, again, I'll say that, was fortunate to work for individuals who cared more about me and my family than they did about what we were doing, right? And now, again, that's no disrespect to the work. The work is the work. But I think working alongside and under, folks who really cared for me. I mean, look, we all know this. It's a lot easier to roll up your sleeves together, accomplish something when you have the trust of those above you, as part of that process. And when that you're, being cared for as an individual, that goes a long way. So I think with that too, I mean, it has nothing to do with business, but I've always felt most encouraged, and it goes back to playing days, right? I mean, even coaches, some people, there's different coaching styles, but the one commonality, I think people like to play for coaches who, really care and push you and care about development. Now, I would also say that some things that I always, valued in those who I worked with and learned from, that I try to emulate as well, is being aware of how they want to grow. I mean, I touched on my opportunities and how I was given a chance to grow, create, and be invited to meetings and so forth, and just learn how they were thinking. And I think that's, gaining access and asking questions, but having them be willing to spend the time to say, here's where I'm thinking about it. It's always fascinating, right? I think something may seem so logical to people who have made the same decision or similar decisions so many times, but if it's new to you, you often go like, that's crazy. I hadn't thought of that. So I asked a lot of questions, but I received a lot of answers, and I received a lot of attention with that, right? So again, those things are also layered on top of work ethic. Credibility, reputation management, things like that, it was all authentic. And again, that's something where I think comes down the most, no matter what we do, whether we're working in soccer at USL, whether you're working, in a non-sport sector, it really doesn't matter. You like to work alongside people that you enjoy, and that, support you, but you also feel part of the team. And I think maybe that's the athlete in all of us, right? We like being part of a team. So, by the time I had left USA Hockey, I hope that I had carried that too. And others had felt that all those things that I valued in others maybe were passed on, and, my work with them. And that's how we try to attack it now. But, I think all things being equal, people enjoy doing business, whether that's inside an office or that's external relationships. They like doing business with people they enjoy, because if that's not there, something has to be a heck of a value proposition to do business with people you don't like. And, we make decisions as consumers every day, whether it's, yeah, I'll take that individual knocking on my door or not. And, they're just instinctive relationship decisions. So, again, those are the things I learned. Those are the things I respected so much about individuals who I worked under and alongside. And those are the things that still matter today. Again, the trust, and then just the ability to continue to gain the time and learn from.
Great. Yeah, I think that's another thing, you mentioned in there that has just been spoken about every time, of hard work in sports. And, we've spoken with people who have come from, obviously we're in the soccer world, but have come from the NFL, NHL, NBA, tech world, all kind of different realms, that hard work is a non-negotiable in all of those places, especially sports. And then it is what goes on around the hard work that actually, keeps the hard workers in the right place, but also, channels that hard work in the right direction. And it is about, building each other up. And I think that's the interesting thing, now as we pivot in to the soccer side of things with yourself, with your role, it's that you're also bringing up all of the teams, because we've spoken with different presidents, owners of clubs, people in different roles. And something we've asked a few times is, how does that collaboration between the teams look like? And you're obviously in a very unique role where you're sort of, overseeing that collaboration, also just working one-to-one on that basis. So take us quickly through, we'll get into the details of what you get up to and advice for new teams and all of that good stuff. But take us a bit through, what does a week, a month in your life look like in your role now with the USL? What are you spending your time on? How does that all get divvied up to serve all of the teams in the three leagues as well as at the league level?
Yeah, an awful lot of conversations, right? I mean, an awful lot of facilitated group conversations with clubs. I'll get into that in a little bit, of how we try to attack that and how we think that's helpful, based on club feedback. And then a lot of one-on-one conversations too. But, at the end of the day, we need to be open and available to the clubs. We have 46 professional clubs when you look at, Women's Super League and League One Championship, with varying levels of business needs, right? And again, the more, if you look at a staffing size, some are more elaborate, sophisticated than other, front office staffing structures. But some encounter the same issues, right? I mean, ticketing strategy is always a challenge in any market. And I know I've heard Ron share this. I know I've heard Nick Reagan share this on your podcast. And certainly we hear that all the time. It's a challenge. It's a lifeblood of revenue. But sponsor strategy and challenges or opportunities, I'd flip that around in one market, maybe very similar to the other. And that has nothing to do with staff sizing. So what we try to do, and this goes back to, again, credit to leadership here at USL for identifying there's a need to have a club-centric department. Again, there's always been resources and support, so no disrespect to anybody and how this has always been run, but the department was new from a mind shift standpoint of, we want to make sure that we're staffed. And again, full credit to leadership and those before me who put this department into place. But we need to be a staff that is listening and able to respond. It's like, okay, I know that's the challenge. Like, here's the solution, and kind of work through that. And that may mean, and it has meant, us securing at USL some outside partners to help us gather additional resources that, maybe we didn't have. So things like brand identification and, media values of certain sponsor assets in front of kit or so forth that, need some outside help. So we've done that, but a lot of it, this has been listening and learning. But a week and a day, really varies. And some of this is we look at how the CPG group has grown. It was started really with a focus on partnerships. We thought that we could make the most impact at the club level with as many clubs as possible at the partnership side of it. And, that started really by realizing that the league has an awful lot of data, data collected from clubs that would be helpful for others to see. And again, not that that wasn't shared before, but the first part of that project in December of 2023 was really looking at historicals and the average of category spends across USL, and sharing that with club and say, hey, club A, here's the top 25 averages, right? Or the top 25 categories, rather. Out of these top 25 categories, you don't have a deal in 6 of them. Therefore, the easy opportunity size for you, if we roll this up, could be XYZ dollars if you just sold an average deal here. So, and then, but consequently, it was also, and you also have 3 deals in there that are actually below league value. So if you could just raise those individual deals to the league average, hey, here's your opportunity size. And a lot of that, that's not rocket science by any means, but it was data that we had that, hey, maybe clubs haven't seen this in a while or haven't looked at it this way. And then it was an intentional wait and respond to then go, okay, what are the clubs going to come back to? Where do they now need help with that? And it was, hey guys, this is great. We appreciate it. Now the next question, maybe, from a few clubs, of how do we then go about closing a deal in this particular category, right? So then we're off to the races from a strategy standpoint to say, okay, here we go. And then once we helped identify maybe some things that could work, we supported with some national attractiveness. We worked on the pitch analysis, whatever it might be. Then we realized, hey, this is probably, not going to be applicable to everybody, but it might be worth us essentially sharing some of these findings and these outputs with all clubs to see if, hey, here's an area we've supported one club. We know some might have similar challenges. Might this be helpful? And we'd like to have a one-on-one with you, right? So very much a snowball effect as we've kind of gone through this. And now look at clubs know what they can ask for support with. It's very clear. We're also very proud that we won't say no to things. There's enough humility to say we don't know that right now. We'll have to go look and let us try to figure this out. But we're happy if we can at any point be an extension of our clubs at any level, whether they have the bandwidth and they just don't have the time, or whether they don't have time and bandwidth. We're happy to support them in any way that is. And now it's growing again. Ticketing will take more of a priority in 2025, and how we can help and try to advance that and build upon what we learned from ticketing in 2024. The consumer goods side will increase. There's been more investment in, we look at facilities programming opportunities, and then community engagement on the soccer front, right? Taking some resources we have here, and, is there a long-term fan development pathway that we can help support clubs with through proper engagement if they need it, with their local soccer communities or just local communities at large, and then digital marketing. So each of those areas has one-on-one conversations daily, scheduled meetings that, just maybe impromptu, hey, have a question, can you guys help with this? So, we're always going through our workflow to make sure that we can deliver, as we said, and make sure that we can hit club timelines. The sponsorship's easy. If someone says, hey, I got a great meeting tomorrow, what can you do for us? Then we'll get them what they need tomorrow. It may not look as pretty as if we had a runway, but we'll get them what they need at any point because we want to be there for them. And other folks will say, hey, we got a couple months for this. Can you get it to us? And sure, we'll work on that. But we want to be available where and how clubs need us. But then again, we have these group conversations to share, if there's mass information that, we think is beneficial to a group, then, we'll get the ticketing groups together, our sponsorship groups together from, a few clubs, or the presidents together from a few clubs, and talk through some things, and then also facilitate opportunities. This is selfish for me, and I love it. I love when club leadership is on a call that we have with them, because those are learning experiences for me. You have leaders running it day to day. I love to learn from them all and figure out what are they doing, what are their challenges, and then again, it goes back to us from a strategy standpoint to say, hey, group internally, can we help them challenge this, because it can't be unique to them, and kind of go from there. But at least those group settings allow us to share broader information and with groups instead of one-on-ones. But those are learning sessions, full disclosure. Those are, we may bring some agenda items to the table, but then it's listen and learn and grow in accordance with them. So a lot of conversations, I'll go back to what I said, but a lot of planning to make sure that, we're getting better than we were, the previous 3 months or 6 months. And I can tell you, looking back from, just from a standpoint of the information we were able to share in let's call it, February of 24, was far different than what we were able to share in February of 25, because, again, we have the advent of data, we have the advent of great collaboration with clubs, and we know some areas that move the needle. So now we can say, okay, how do we replicate that, if possible, with other clubs?
That's incredible to hear, especially given USL's growth over the last, even just like a year, 2 years. It, you touched on one of the things specifically that I wanted to ask about, which was the breadth of what you guys do and you help clubs with. But one of the things that you touched on specifically was the importance of partnerships and sharing that partnership data with new clubs and old clubs. That's something that I've learned over our time doing the podcast, that partnerships are a huge part of the business that people don't really get to see and they don't totally understand. It's like the club might be going out into the community and doing a community event where they have the players interact with kids, and the impact that has on the community then cascades into the kids and those families becoming fans and ultimately helping the club in the long run. So it's really cool to hear that you guys are helping clubs, new and old, with new and new strategies to kind of help them keep going and keep pushing and changing the way and helping USL grow. Could you kind of highlight the importance specifically of partnerships to smaller clubs versus bigger clubs? Because as you were saying, you guys now have the data like, oh, the average spend of these 25 teams is X amount. Like, could you guys match that? What could you do? This is how you could upgrade your partnerships.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, look at partnerships, we look at it a couple of ways. One, there's the traditional sponsorship that we'll call partnerships, because again, I think it transcends just an ad buy, right? There's the element of, there's a cash infusion that goes with rights that somebody's buying, but there's also the clubs who are able to lean on those partners for more than cash infusion, right? There's a benefit to all that, right? So a proper activation of a club's marks in a marketplace, right? Now all of a sudden exposes, whether it's the club logo showing up on their official moving companies, vans or trucks around town, that's exposure. So I think, oftentimes we're working on, what is the cash revenue associated with a partnership? What is a partnership value? Meaning, do they have a commitment to spend and activate on your marks as well, right? Which again is exposure, which then I'll kind of transcend there from a marketing standpoint, a club marketing standpoint. Partnerships matter for many, many reasons at the local level. That could be one, it's the right thing to do. I mean, as professional clubs, USL, they are stewards of the game of soccer in their communities, right? And these aren't small communities. I mean, some are smaller than others, certainly. But if you look at, many of the championship markets, I mean, these are major markets, and they're the only professional soccer club in town, which, again, to introduce professional soccer to folks in those communities, wherever they are throughout the USL ecosystem, is a great privilege that all these clubs, do not take lightly. Now, as we see their investment in soccer and in fandom, I think one thing that'll be interesting as we look to do is kind of track that fan growth, right? I mean, you can do all the community partnerships because they are the right thing to do. You need to grow fans, but how neat is it to then be able to say, through whatever it is, a soccer boys and girls initiative that, this particular club was a part of, we had 150 new individuals come out to the game. We collected their data, not to abuse them, but to track their fandom or their family's fandom. Did that email address pop up then at a ticket redemption all of a sudden? Hey, great. That's, now we had X percentage of them go from being introduced to the game thanks to our investment in the community to now come to a match. Now we probably want to keep an eye on their email addresses and discuss soccer with them different, right? They may not care about the club newsletter about the new signing because that's just over their head as a new fan, but they'd love to know that the next family night is coming up and there's going to be fireworks post-match next week, right? So that targeted messaging, and that's what our digital marketing individual in our department is kind of working to make sure that all messaging is not the same, that it's kind of unique, but you have to know who your fans are. So I think this is a good example of community engagement, partnerships in your community, the impact that it has is not just locked at that one point in time where we interacted with them. What is the fan growth of that individual and their family? And, again, how cool would it be down the road if, if he or she shows up through our youth system, if we're affiliated with them, or one of the clubs that we're affiliated with, they buy a kit at some point, and now they bought partial season tickets, and that email address was attributed back to an entry-level Grow the Game initiative. So I think what's really cool is our clubs do a great job. We're just trying to see, and many of them do this already, we're trying to see if there's any ways we can kind of get our heads around this and support them better to figure out what that value of a fan life cycle is and how they're going through the funnel, because we know fans enter at a different point in time. And again, I'll go back to one of the strengths, one of the many strengths of our USL clubs is back to that initiative. They are the entry point of professional soccer to many fans. And again, that's pretty cool when you think about that. That the introduction of pro soccer comes through USL, and all of a sudden they're a fan, of that club. There's some loyalty, there's some community pride, but now they're a fan of the game, which means a lot to all of us as fans to see that continue to grow. And we know from statistics to have, everything to do with participation and, just fan growth overall, that soccer fandom continues to increase, and in large part, USL has played a crucial role in that.
Yeah, you guys have done an incredible job. Like I was saying earlier about the growth of the game, especially in all of the markets that MLS has missed or isn't in. The community engagement and the way that you guys engage everyone in the US with professional soccer, especially leading up to these next few really important years on a global soccer scale, is going to be really important for the country going forward in the sport. And I'm really excited to see how everything shakes out and just how it goes, because it's literally the biggest event in the world is coming to our front door in 2 years. And as a fan of the game, I just can't wait for it. Since you deal with organizations of all different shapes and sizes across the country, what are some of the things that new ownership groups or managing directors, presidents of clubs that you see they don't take into account all the time, or some of the more common aspects of the business that maybe get a little bit forgotten about? And this would kind of be for all of our listeners out there who are thinking of starting their own club somewhere else.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I can't speak solely to that, because at the point in time where they enter, conversations with us, there's great resources at USL to equip them. And I know Jeremy mentioned this when he was on, but we have, once expansion kind of kicks in through then, our onboarding group, and then we're introduced as a resource. I think USL does a fantastic job about introducing areas of opportunity and guidance and support where needed at every point in the way. So, from my seat, I see, there's always levels of support that are needed, but the resources are so rich for a club coming on board to have, really here's things you should consider. Tentpole events is, how they're identified, but also there's touch points of, connecting with existing owners, what they would have done differently, how they would have changed things. So, clearly not having ever done that myself, I look at it going, wow, there's a lot of comfort there, though, because there's resources at every step of the way. And look, the onboarding process does include introduction to our CPG group now as well, right? I mean, we're talking to clubs right now, and whether it's stadium naming rights evaluation work for clubs that won't kick the ball for 2 years or a year and a half or whatever that might be in our league, and those are fun. So now they do have resources every step of the way. But the other thing I think, and go back to this, the strength of the league is the owners at the club level, and it truly is, and just their ability to help one another. Again, there's now again, you go back to 46 pro clubs exist right now, and they're always going to have questions, but they have owners to talk to. If you're new on board and you're in the system, and you're in the expansion to onboarding process, you're going to have some other networking folks to talk to and figure that out. But it's fun, and we're happy to just interject any services we can at any point. But look, at the data is helpful as well, right? I mean, the data, I think, not just at the local level, that example I gave on sponsorship, but it could be, here's things you haven't thought of at the national level, right? I mean, it could be people tend to look so much at their local market because that's where money will be made, and that is accurate. A great part of USL strength, though, is its ability to impact locally but reach nationally. And that's a club who is, if I look out my window here across the bay to St. Pete, the Rowdies there, yes, they're impacting this Tampa Bay community, but they also deliver significant eyeballs every time they're on the road in all these other markets that may have local linear reach in those markets, in addition to what's going on here. And then, oh, by the way, it could be a national match that's a national broadcast. Now those brands involved at what was considered a local deal have such scale at the regional and national level. So I think sometimes it's just even sharing that. As you guys are all thinking about what's going on locally, here's some national trends we've identified that may be worth sharing, or that social post that went out that was viral that just happened to show your front of kit pretty significantly, got picked up by external soccer channels, and now it actually generated X in adjusted ad value, where you never even sold that as a social piece, but it did happen to get some national reach thanks to the scope and the reach of the league and the visibility. So I think, for us, it's what are we observing that, a club certainly is capable of, and they are many times, but it's just, hey, we're making sure that there's some data pieces that we can share with others, because we know that they're very, very busy in the day-to-day. And again, that's what we're here for, is to be an additional resource to them. So, again, I think it's just how we can help at any stage of the game. And there's so many resources throughout the organization that can do that.
Definitely. And that's the interesting thing about partnerships, is that, adjusted ad value, or any kind of, perspective ad value, because it's not performance marketing, where it's this dollar into this ad leads to this conversion. It's kind of put the logos, put the partnerships in place, and kind of, hope that it attracts the right attention. But when you came into the league, I know you've mentioned, some trends in certain areas that you could pull from seeing something good at one club, and a missed opportunity elsewhere. When you came in, as you mentioned earlier, you came in as a fan, but you'd built this working knowledge of the sports landscape, of the partnership side, of marketing, of just, club operations in a different league. Were there any common, sort of untapped opportunities between, clubs at one league, another league, that you were able to kind of like, plug the holes very quickly of like, oh, we can tackle that right now? Of course, you'll have picked things up throughout the year, but right in those early days of just seeing, behind the lens of everywhere.
No, I think a lot of clubs were doing things very well. What we were able to do is help maybe map out the whole story. So, I mean, you just brought that up, Matt, from a value, right? From a, adjusted ad value, and what's the impressions worth. But, I think what we tried to do from our end is realize that going back to my answer on the last question, there's local impact and there's national reach. So in that model right there, just by saying that, we can deliver significant impressions to a brand, but you can influence that with that brand has the ability to influence families locally in the stadium through, organic content that's pushed out. You can actually speak to folks and speak to families. So I think it's always an understanding, first and foremost, in any sort of sponsorship environment, you can't have solutions to brand problems that you don't know exist yet. And, we take that same approach from a department standpoint. I can't assume to have any solutions for clubs that haven't identified a problem. I mean, I need to hear that in order to evaluate that. But it's the same on, the club, sponsorship/partnership work. You have to identify, what that partner is trying to solve for. You have to identify that, we are a reliable means of partner investment, and we can help you achieve those goals. And look, it's going to vary by brand. I mean, you could have a brand, and this is common in anything, right? I mean, you could have a local brand saying, community pride means so much to me that I need to be affiliated with the most prominent sport organization in my town, and that's a USL club, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that visibility, right? The ROI against that for that particular brand may be like, I'm not going to say it's non-existent, but the goal is awareness. Therefore, the club says, okay, I can deliver that for you, and here's the roll-up of impressions. Where, there could be other clubs that say, it's really important for me to make an impact locally, but you know what, we're a national brand, and I love the fact that through this, I can gain visibility in, 24 other markets when we're on the road. And actually that really impresses us from a media buy standpoint, because this is really strategic. Now there's scale to our local investment, going back to some examples earlier. So it may, it may matter, but you have to know what the goal of that brand is. I'm very confident in our USL clubs and USL overall to deliver on every one of those things. But again, it needs to make sure that, what club's objectives there are. Now, if someone says, hey, I'm going to come and I want to make sure I sell, XYZ number of products, that's tough, right? Because you're a soccer club selling opportunity for you as the brand to influence all of our people. And here's how you can do it. But at the end of the day, clubs aren't selling, cars or whatever. They're facilitating great impressions for the brand to do that. Now, I go back to, this is where the campaign and the activations really come to mind, because as the club can be aware, saying, hey, we'll deliver all these impressions, but if this is what you want, we think you should actually be more in line with our, VIP hospitality area, because here's who's engaging in that on a match by match basis. And then, we may have some data to say, actually, your market really over-indexes, your soccer fans rather, in your market over-index against the general population when it comes to being in the market for a car in the next 30 to 60 days. And oh, by the way, soccer fans in your particular market over-index on luxury cars. So when you're evaluating, or presenting to multiple dealerships, now there's some data to not only say we're reliable, but now maybe strategically target what kind of assets or where that activation should be, steered toward, because you want to impact the right audience at the right time. So again, it's just, are there things that we can help remind clubs that, or is there data we can help support them with so that they can make the best decision to align the right assets with the right audience, with the right brand? But clubs are savvy. They know this. I think a lot of times it's just, we'll go, can we help, right? And they'll come to us and say, hey, we're going to talk to, our financial services partner, or a financial services prospect. What can you tell us? And we'll go, is it checking in? Is it financial wealth management? Is it, house lending and mortgage? I mean, what, and then they could go, it's a couple of those, we just want to present what is the data support, and, and we'll pull some information together and say, actually, you have a pretty compelling case here from a, financial education for teens, right? There's data to support that. Maybe that's a great opportunity for this group. And, but another bank actually may be better for the mortgage business. So now you split the category and you really can significantly increase the revenue that was traditionally just banking. No, let's not lock that in. Let's carve this into specific paths, because you as a club have a great runway to make an influence on this brand in this particular targeted area, maybe this one and another. So it's walking alongside them, thinking through it. And again, what's fun about that is, as much as I was in hockey, partnerships it could be cut and paste with any other sport or any other profit, for-profit sector. It was just, it's an understanding, it's an asking the question. I think the order of that operation is more important than, really your approach to it needs to be consistent with the asking, and then evaluate and then offer solutions only at that point in the cycle.
Definitely. And that's, there's something that's so interesting about sports is, and the partnership side of things, is some clubs get to have the choice. When you think of like NFL teams where, any company for the most part wants to be attached, to these certain clubs because of that exposure. And USL Championship, is getting bigger and bigger with the coverage, with the exposure. But then how does that, effort of attracting partners differ from the championship level to League One to the Super League, when it comes to, maybe there are, competing teams in the same region, maybe is a bigger city and it's a USL League One team that's plotted there, that they're, fighting for a lot more of, the same pie. What is that sort of effort when it comes to speaking with partners, trying to get partners? How does that differ between the leagues?
Yeah, I don't know that it differs between the leagues. I mean, certainly there may be we'll play, broadcasts may increase, obviously, the championship level with some more national broadcast matches, maybe larger, DMAs. So then the local linear reach is bigger in one market versus the next, the championship versus League One versus Super. But I think what's really interesting is how clubs, are so savvy going into their markets, competing against maybe it's other top 5 stick and ball leagues or whatever it is, and then really identifying what the value proposition amongst soccer fans is. And we know this, that soccer fans, and we do the research, so we know this. Actually, we work with Vision Insights as a partner of ours to kind of pull a lot of this research that we share with clubs. But we know that soccer fans are extremely savvy, and not only that, USL fans are extremely sponsor savvy. They are more aware than their other sporting counterparts, fans rather, of brands that sponsor their teams. And I think a lot of that, if you look at it from a USL standpoint, there is that tribal community aspect to that, right? I mean, there's an investment in me as a fan to go support my club. But I also know, and again, Nick Reagan spoke about this with the Colorado Springs Switchbacks, right? My city, my team. And there is a lot of that mentality throughout USL. And I think because of that, fans know that there's also an awareness of what's going on. The venues are a little more intimate where I can be exposed to so many of my partners, right? So that's a value. But when a club can realize that here's our differentiating factor, and then go to their market and say, and here's why you investing in soccer versus maybe some other, sporting options in that same market, or up the road an hour away, here's why we're different. And the good news is we are different, and we're different as a fan base for a lot of very attractive reasons. And look, there's a lot of people I talk to, friends that are work at brands now, friends that work at agencies. They may not know much about soccer. They didn't play the game, but it's hard for them to ignore the noise going on at USL and see and ask some questions and go, what's different about this? And I'll talk all day about what's different about this. But, a lot of my commentary is also like, but it's different by market too. There's commonalities of why USL is attractive overall, but here's what's different about this market versus a different one. And it may be, League One, you look at a lot of those, they're college markets. Back to that whole, Jägermeister competition that started last year with just League One, and now will be interleague this year. Fantastic. But the Jägermeister knew there's attractiveness in being around a lot of college markets, right? Respectfully, how they go about their business and activating that. So when you look at a Madison or a Knoxville and, many of these other ones, like that's an attractive piece of that versus, let's say, a brand going, I like the reach of championship because maybe it affords me some national broadcast visibility on CBS. And as a brand, we were actually going to do a CBS deal anyway. So this gives us a pathway to do that, right? So at the national level, maybe it differs a little bit, but the strength in USL is really in its mass when you look at the pathway. So you got all the professional teams, great, right? But then you got 240 something pre-professional right under that. And then you got whole your youth and academy. So the touch points are so wide amongst the USL that there's something attractive for everyone. But again, that's the same at a club level. A club has attractiveness for whether they are operating their own youth or club or academy program, or they're just affiliated with some in their community. There's still touch points at the high to low. But a lot of this again is just what's the value proposition, and clubs know that, but we can help kind of tell a story of what we're seeing trend wise as well. And people are noticing, and I think as we look at this, fandom is going to continue to grow just due to exposure as we approach World Cup. But USL clubs are already here, right? So it's like brands don't wait to get involved in the game. If you want to know, how to really make an impact, be there before new fandom starts and be part of that whole journey. Welcome them in as a fan and do that as part of a partnership with USL and or USL clubs. So there's an existing opportunity for those who think that, World Cup 26 is the time to do it. One, it may be too late at that point. And two, I mean, it's such a finite period of time controlled by FIFA, where if you really want to own that fandom, then there's opportunities to do it right now and after. And look, we're working with some clubs too that are renewing deals now or signing deals now that take them through and past that World Cup period, helping evaluate some things and maybe just basic modeling. I'm dumbing this down, but if we project maybe a 5% increase in attendance in a particular market as a benefit of the post-World Cup bump, what does that do to value of impressions, the years after the World Cup? And just basic modeling to storytell that now is a great time to get on board, but here's where the growth will take, and here's what we feel will kind of be the impact to you as a partner of ours, years down the road. So a lot of exciting things though, but I mean, it's not that the time will come. It's like the time is here and it's been here a little bit. And I think it's just making sure we get that message across and listening to what a brand is looking for and seeing if we can help them.
Yeah, it's really cool actually the way you're talking about it. It's making me think a little bit differently from like a fan perspective. It almost seems like the way that you guys are helping clubs succeed is giving the fans almost like a membership, like kind of going back to your USA hockey days where you guys were dealing with partnerships on a membership level, like, hey, we can extend your reach to this many people. It sounds very much like you guys are doing that on a club level across the USL, and that the organizations are like, hey, yeah, we want to get exposure to our local market so the fans can we can have this level of conversion with specific soccer fans and stuff. And that sounds really cool from a fan perspective, like, oh, I have access to all of these specifically local brands just because I'm a fan of of New Mexico United or Colorado Springs. That sounds really, really interesting to me. And it sounds like it's a really good time to become a USL fan for sure.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. I mean, and you're right. And the nice thing about this is USL has grown as the national broadcast has grown. Again, now what probably may have been predominantly localized regional brands. Again, now clubs have the ability to deliver for brands looking for national scale, right? So now you look at a lot of the brands throughout the ecosystem at Championship, League One, even Super League level. They're national brands. It's not Johnny's Pizza Shop. I mean, these are major national players and brands that realize this is a reliable strategic means of investment. And we're trying to help clubs with that too. I mean, one of the things that we're working on with, some of our championship clubs who have LED boards and then who have maybe a threshold of viewership and attendance, and identifying them and then saying, is there an appetite here if we kind of facilitate what 3 minutes of aggregate LED time means in one market when go play in another market. It may be a little different because their viewership is a little higher, but it may be 4 minutes here and 3 minutes here. But are you guys willing to trade now because you just sold it to a national partner that when you go on the road, there's visibility on your kit sleeve, whatever it might be. But what if you then deliver in that major market, Detroit, Tampa, whatever it might be, some visibility LED wise in that local broadcast as well. So helping clubs realizing, and it's not helping them realize, it's helping them maybe map out a consideration and, will they do a home and home swap, right? And it may be, okay, now we got to figure out who plays each other home and home next year. But is there a chance to do a LED swap because we know we want to deliver more national or more further reach for some of the partners that, we're just getting LED minutes in your stadium. Actually, no, we can deliver it when we go on the road as well. Now, there's a lot of things to consider with that. There's, does 3 minutes translate to 3 minutes everywhere? No, it doesn't, right? And people have to be comfortable. It may mean that, you get 3 minutes here, but when that club comes back, the reciprocal is actually you owe them 4 minutes, just the way kind of our analysis works out. And then certainly there's category conflicts that if you have an auto deal, they can't come in with another auto partner. And so there's things we're working around, but I think what that speaks to is like, sure, there's local opportunities for brands to make an impact, but most of them aren't local brands anymore, right? There's inventory available because I think everyone's realizes the strength in making sure there's community support and you want to, offer up some inventory. But, if when the season starts, when you read a lot of these front of kit partners, for instance, and a lot of major national, international brands in that mix as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's the USL, as we saw with the CBS deal just in the previous few years, is becoming a nationally viewed league, and not even nationally, globally at this point, especially with now the deeper and deeper runs that the championship teams are making in the Open Cup, and even the USL League One teams like Union Omaha made a great run last year and such. So it's really cool to see that it's growing on all fronts, not just on the team performance side of the sport, pretty much.
When it comes to the partnership side of breaking down, from a financial partner of you have a mortgage partner, you have a checking partner. When you came in, was there anything that was like surprising that there's a partner for that like the idea has been crafted? Because even David and I were both involved with a NISA club a few years ago. And it's like, when you're watching the broadcast of the away games when we're here, and it's like, oh, Chattanooga has a corner kick partner. Oh, we haven't thought of that. Beyond even just like the higher tiers of like hydration partner and all of those levels. But what are some of the ones that have been the most surprising or, like borderline, like funny, that like we've been able to craft a partnership and like, frame it and label it as a partner in that category?
Yeah, I'm probably the worst one to ask this to. And here's why, because as someone who's been on the sales process side of it, everything is logical to me, right? So it's like, it's already like, yeah, why wouldn't we be able to work out something that kind of meets their needs? But there's a lot of savviness at the club level trying to work out, inventory and how things are done. But I actually want to speak almost to the some of the impressive parts. Is we've looked at some data with two circles this past year. It was previously core, just evaluating some pieces of inventory. I mean, it's remarkable about what's picked up, and I think it almost just spins the wheels a little bit more. So your front of kit is the front of kit. It's always going to be the crown jewel of the club, right? You're planting your flag in the kit, if you're the club, if you will, by owning that prestigious inventory that is seen so much. But we've been impressed too, just from a data standpoint of realizing, let's say the back of kit below number, how much visibility that picks up. And when you get kind of dissect it, obviously it makes sense, right? Every time there's a goal, there's a replay of a quality attacking chance. What are you seeing from a camera standpoint? You're seeing the back of everyone's kit, right? What are you seeing after that goal is scored when the camera pans in close? You're seeing guys huddling, holding onto each other, celebrating. And what are you seeing? You're seeing the back of kit, right? So this is a logical thing. As I say it, it's like, well, yeah, of course we should have seen this coming. And I'm not saying people were surprised. I don't mean it that way. But what I will tell you is we've looked at that and going, perhaps this is an undervalued piece of inventory because it was probably, well, yeah, our front of kit is sold, but you can have the back of kit rather. And again, not that wasn't the case with everyone, but I think as we look at inventory of what gains impressions, it's interesting. That's where data can really help move the needle on some of these. And clubs who some of our clubs obviously, as play in the stadiums that either had been or currently are baseball stadiums. The visibility of what would be like the outfield wall, like that stuff picks up really well. And again, there's no surprise in that, but where those tend to be kind of behind goals, I think of Las Vegas is one of those where, they have that outfield wall. I mean, if that could be replicated, and maybe that does help some people think differently, okay, in a soccer stadium, can we build some infrastructure that has signage, not obviously to block, fan view, but, I think of Colorado Springs and Widener Field, they have kind of on the camera view, those corners are branded. I believe one's a local law firm, one is Pepsi, I believe. Those are significant because now you're seeing where a camera is looking every corner kick, every time I'm panning to left or right, that's invisibility. So, I think I'm not answering your question on this particular end, but I think what is interesting and has been fascinating for us is just looking at what picks up and then being able to maybe share that with others who are looking for different inventory or looking for assets to help justify and support, to their partners of why this is really important. We've looked at that and we've learned a lot from it. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's something that's interesting about the clubs that are in the baseball stadiums, especially that wall that they have of just this open canvas, whether they want to make it partner branding, their own branding. Because I'm sure you've noticed, some of the stadiums over in Europe, like I know Man City's stadium, the Etihad has it where the, LED screens that run along the sidelines, they've now got these, kind of like staggered that it makes it look taller and they can split it that way with the camera angle. Like, that's, now that my brain is just picking up on all of these things and I come from the marketing side of things as well, obviously at a much lower scale, but noticing that, that looks taller than I remember it last season, but it's not taller. It's just they've staggered, maybe removed a row of seating or whatever they've done to accomplish that. But with the baseball stadiums that they don't have in England, you just get that big wall and it's not obstructing fan view and you just have this canvas.
And look at, I mean, the new cathedrals to the game that are being built around USL, the soccer specific ones. I mean, that's the gold standard. It's fantastic, right? But, I think in absence of that, can we just be helpful from a league level, looking at broadcast and, looking at things and then kind of going, actually, like, but all things being equal at this point, given your venue is going to look different than this one, but here's some things we've noticed that may be helpful as you price out offerings next year, or perhaps this is undervalued real estate, or perhaps this is untapped real estate as we've looked at broadcast, and I identified a few things. I mean, there's been a couple of cases where we've looked at match broadcast and say, all things being equal, if the primary camera can pan up ever so slightly, right, it won't take away from the coverage of the pitch. But if plays on kind of that, near far side, whatever it might be, if the view is somewhat the same, you could actually see now the top of your VIP box, which actually could be branded perfectly and gain some significant impressions. Right now, look, I'm not a camera, I don't pretend to be broadcast, but the question does become, hey, it's that 2/3 of the match, you can actually see that piece. like, oh, okay, like that is that inventory that could be sold? Do you as the club own that inventory? Like things to now consider. So, we're trying to look at that as well and just identify with again the benefit of data. Some new areas where clubs can sell if they hadn't already, and just offer some thoughts there.
Definitely. Yeah. It's an exciting space. And I remember, can't remember who it was we were speaking with. It might have been Ron. There was, noticed something on the broadcast of like an opportunity for the club. And that's something that's so interesting about sports as well, is obviously you get the replays on the field, right? You're able to break down things from a video analysis standpoint on the pitch for the trainers, but same goes for the front office of like, you get to kind of analyze the broadcast and like, oh yeah, what if we did pan it there? Or even noticing, fan activity engagement in one corner, around the corner, how can we add on to that? Something that they're doing naturally that you didn't notice in the heat of the moment in the game, but when you're watching back, you're like, oh, that was cool. I did notice they were doing that. How can we supply things to, elevate that?
Yeah, and there's such good collaboration amongst clubs to say, like, here's what we've, go back to those calls that we have, group calls, where we learn. And a lot of it, what's phenomenal about this, and, just as a student of wanting to learn business more and get involved in it more every day, is, hearing the clubs interact with each other, right? Hey, we're thinking about this. We saw you guys did this. I mean, it's collaboration all over the place. I love it. We hope we can help facilitate that, but that's fantastic. And, individuals, as you mentioned, and you've spoken to, like they share with their peers, and, it's pretty impressive to see that. But again, the strength of the league that's another demonstration, I should say, the strength in the league, the ability to realize that, the tide's raising all boats in this sucker. So, what are we doing there? We have a question on that somebody may have another answer to. And so the conversation amongst clubs, they don't need us to do that. They're having that anyway. We just get to benefit when it's in a group setting because we can learn more ourselves.
Yeah, that's the other, such unique thing about sports. And we've asked a few people about that, especially they're in the bigger markets where they are competing for attraction and fans, is that if you're not in the same local market physically, you're not competing for the same customers, not the call fans customers, but just that idea of like attracting, interest from the local people, is that you're competing on the pitch, but off the pitch, you want to help each other because it helps grow the league, helps grow the game. So it's good to know that even without your own facilitation, that it just naturally happens and bubbles throughout the ownerships, the presidents. I mean, the number of them that we've spoken to, it's no surprise that they are behaving in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we wrap up, don't want to take on too much of your time, but one thing I would love to ask, and we love throwing this in at the end, is some looking backwards. I think especially in your role, that is a lot of data driven, insight backed, and also just some level of creativity. You're always thinking about looking forward, both in terms of your role, the league, the sport. But we always love to end with just looking backwards for yourself on a personal level. Is there anything in particular as you think back on your career, and many people just have never done it, so this is the first time they think about it is with us, is there anything specific that you have the most pride in yourself for achieving, not something that you've achieved that also relied on a club or relied on this team, but you, Kevin, can give yourself a bit of a pat on the back for, because you've achieved so much. You're obviously in the right position to achieve so much more moving forward. But what's something that stands out to you looking backwards, that you're proud of yourself for?
Yeah, and that's, I think one of the things I take the most pride in is having been allowed an opportunity to bring my family along with my excitement for what I do. My wife and I have 3 kids. I look back at, even it could be good taking them to a USL match, and they're more familiar with it because they understand. I talk about it with passion, right? They know, and I'm sure, I got a high school student, a middle school student, and one out of high school. I'm sure none of them think I'm cool, but I'd like to think that at least, working in sports gives a little bit of credibility, right, on the fun factor of it. But they see my passion for it. So again, I look at, inviting them along with that and seeing that, this career in sports I've had a blast with. And yeah, it's a job. We all have jobs, but like I think them seeing my passion, my wife's support of what I've done, and her seeing my passion for this means a lot. But there's a couple instances. We had an outdoor game as part of a world championship for hockey years ago. It happened to be over the holidays. We were up at Buffalo Bills Stadium there with an outdoor world championship game, U.S. Canada, unbelievable atmosphere. Kids were there. My wife and I were there. She was part of it. There's a lot of work that went into this. And I have a picture in my office at home of after the match or after the game. Here I was talking soccer, right? After that particular game gets over, stadium's empty, starting to, everything's dwindling down and there, snow's coming down, very magical. And I look over and we're on the ice, and my 3 kids, much younger at the time, are doing snow angels on the ice, like out here. This place was just full, right? It was full of people cheering, going crazy. A world championship U.S. Canada hockey match. And now we got my kids just like naive, like, yeah, we're in the Bill Stadium doing snow angels. But I look at that, like that meant a lot to me, because it was like culmination of, work, but they were a part of it and they enjoyed it. They saw passion in it, not to the level I did, but they were part of it. And I think that's family means more to me than anything else. And I'm privileged to have invited them and their support, my wife's support again, of what I do. And, it's taken me on the road an awful lot, but listen, have passion for what I do. And they see that, and I love their support of it, and that they've been able to, I'd like to think, experience some cool things, both in the soccer and hockey side because of it.
Definitely, 100%. And I'm sure, as your kids are now getting older, and when you start to look backwards and share the stories, that they might not have, looked at it through that lens at the time, but they, as they get older and start to obviously understand the landscape of what you were doing, it'll become a bit of a, wow, can't believe that's what it looked like back then.
I might be cool at some point. Maybe they'll give me credit years down the road, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Kevin, look, it's been amazing, to chat with you, gain some insights from you again. I was really excited to have you on, both to understand from club level insights, league level, the hockey side of things. I think you bring a really unique perspective, in that like your soccer was your thing and you started in a different sport and gained the knowledge and are now bringing it in, to the game that we love, and taking it on. And obviously the time right now for the sport, for the league of USL, the different leagues that you have, is a really pivotal moment, with everything that's been going on the last couple of years, what's coming up in the next 1-2 years. So I'm excited to see how you continue to progress and make a bigger impact at a bigger scale as everything starts to amplify and get magnified. But thank you again for sharing some time, insights. It's been great to learn from you. So best of luck with everything moving forward, both with the teams, the league, and pushing this sport further that we all love watching.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the invitation, the chance to kind of share some of my thoughts on things. Appreciate the coverage and the recognition that you guys not only give for the game, but for USL. There's a lot of attractive storylines throughout the league, and again, I play an extremely small part of it, but I appreciate what you guys do to kind of introduce some other storylines to broader groups of people. So thanks for that.
Thanks for watching this episode of Off the Pitch. Don't forget to drop a follow or subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening from. That helps us bring stories like these to your ears each and every week. And if you have a minute, leave a review as well, as that helps us grow the Off the Pitch community and bring even more exciting guests on. See you in the next one.